What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing a sort of unboxing, 4K review, and movie review of the new release that just came out from Blue Underground called God Told Me To, an old movie from the 70s that we're going to talk about. So let's get into it. So I got to take a early look at the new release that's coming out, Blue Underground release of God Told Me To, the Larry Cohen film from 1975-76, they say. It's a movie about a bunch of people going out and killing people and then blaming God, saying, God told me to, which is pretty wild. Now, if you know Larry Cohen is someone that has been making a lot of different films. He's a screenwriter that's been around for a very long time, and he also directed films as well. In fact, he did movies like Maniac Cop, The Stuff, Hugh the Winged Serpent. We got It's Alive, the franchise, and he even screenwrote the movie Cellular. But he's a very interesting individual that passed some time ago here, and they're putting out a new 4K of this. Now, Blue Underground has put out this actual disc before on Blu-ray. It is a different transfer. This is an all-new transfer that I hear. They've done some different things with it, color grading wise, that some are okay with and some are not. It just really kind of depends up to you. We'll get into that more later. But yeah, it's a brand new release. If you see here, it comes with, of course, the Blu-ray. This is the reversible cover, by the way, that you can switch. As you can see, here is the new artwork. I just kind of prefer the old artwork. Always have. So, you have two discs. This is your Blu-ray, and this is your 4K. 4K HDR Dolby Atmos is going to be in here. You're going to be getting a 1.85 to 1 feature presentation, which is pretty big, actually. It covers most of the screen and it looks really great. If you're not a Dolby Atmos person yet, don't worry. We got the 5.1 DTS HD in English. We also have the 1.0 DTS in HD English and a French Dolby Digital in 2.0. Plus, they got subtitles for French, Spanish, and the English SDH. But there's a lot of new features that are packed into this one. Obviously, you get the slip cover that comes with it, just a paper. There is no inside contents other than the discs that you normally would get. Blu-ray, I believe, is being sold for about $28, $30, and then the 4K of everything is about $50 with the Blu-ray. Now, this is my first time watching it, and I'll be doing a review afterwards, so if you're curious about what my thoughts are on the film, I will say that it looked phenomenal. I didn't see the problems that they were having with the color grading on this one. There was supposedly some extra blue in the color grading process that they did that was not present in the 1080 version, the 1080p Blu-ray version, which some people say they like better. I personally, while watching the 4K and comparing it to the Blu-ray copy, it didn't seem all that noticeable. Some people were saying that some of the colors in this 4K release are a little too bright, and the blues you can kind of see. And to be honest, I didn't really notice much of it during the process of watching it, and I made sure to kind of take notice as much as I could while I'm watching it for the first time. But I didn't really notice the blue until the very end in some of the darker sort of differently lit scenes, I'll just put it that way, towards the end. I didn't think it was all that bad, but there are some reviews out there that are much more on the technical side that you can look up that will explain the difference there. Some people are just saying that they prefer the 1080p version, but I thought this looked fantastic. I thought the colors were bright, but I liked it. I liked that it had a lot of color to it. The end was a little bit washed out, but I think that was kind of intentionally done in the beginning when they first shot this film. But overall, I mean, with the extras that you get in this, which there's quite a bit actually, a lot of the extras are going to be on the Blu-ray disc, while a few are on the 4K disc. For example, on the 4K disc, you're going to be getting a audio commentary with writer-producer Larry Cohen, who talks about it. He sits down, and it's actually a pretty good one. I listened to quite a bit of it, and he's an interesting individual and talks about the process of him making this film and some of the people who were in the film and their stories. For example, some of the cast in this movie is Tony LoBianco, Deborah Raffin, Sandy Dennis, Richard Lynch, who he goes into talking about, because Richard Lynch is notoriously known for getting burned after an LSD accident, and he was in this film, and they utilized some of that in this film. So it's really interesting. They also have Andy Kaufman, who makes a appearance in the movie for a short while as a police officer. You got Sylvia Sidney, who's in this movie, who is notorious for smoking the cigarettes and blowing out the smoke from her neck hole in Beetlejuice. So a lot of really cool stuff in here. You also have audio commentary. It's the second one on the 4K disc with film historians Steve Mitchell and Troy Howarth. Plus, you get the theatrical trailers and the TV spots on the 4K. Now, on the Blu-ray, you get all of that. Plus, you get, it's called Heaven and Hell on Earth, an interview with star Tony LoBianco. Bloody Good Times, interview with special effects artist Steve Neal. You also get God Told Me to Bone, a New Beverly Q&A with Larry Cohen. There's a Lincoln Center Q&A with Larry Cohen, the theatrical trailers, TV spots, and a poster, stills, and galleries. It's pretty loaded for a disc, and I think a lot of people who will enjoy this are going to be picking it up automatically, because this is one of his lesser known, but also kind of like his masterworks of films that he's done. A lot of his films are very schlocky and a little silly at times for some people. They're very independent, and he would just write them as he went. This one is a little bit more closer to home, and I'm going to get into that now and kind of talk to you guys about this. I will provide a link for you to pick this up from one of the boutiques, MVD Group, who is a distribution group that puts out a lot of different titles, including horror and everything else. They often have a lot of sales, and I've been working with them for quite a while, so I'll put a link down below for you to pick up a copy of this, or at least pre-order it. Should be out on the 19th, so you should be able to get it in the mail relatively quick. But for now, I'm going to actually do my review, a spoiler-free review of this movie and what my thoughts are on my initial first time watching it. God Told Me To is actually a pretty surprisingly decent film. Now, I wasn't madly in love with this film. This is the first time I've watched it. You know, I'm a fan of the stuff. It's alive to a degree. Maniac Cop movies are pretty fun. And Q the Winged Serpent, and quite a few others that he's done. Pretty talented individual that I think doesn't get the credit sometimes that I think he deserves, because he wrote a whole ton of stuff. If you ever get a chance, check out IMDb and check out his catalog of screenwriting. He's done a lot. But yeah, I really kind of felt like this was a pretty decent movie. And surprisingly, it still kind of represents today. There are some things in this movie that I made parallels with from the 70s when this came out to today. And I thought that was pretty interesting how it's still relevant in today's world. This is a story about a cop who goes out to investigate why people are on these murder sprees. The beginning of the movie starts out instantly with a guy just shooting people from a water tower and picking people off randomly in the street. And when actor Tony LoBianco's character, Peter Nicholas, who is a cop on the scene, he goes to talk to the guy and find out why he's killing people. And the guy tells him, God told me to, which is pretty eerie when you think about it. Now, this movie is a lot of a mystery sort of thriller kind of movie. It's a lot less on the horror side. There isn't a ton of gore or anything. There are moments of nudity and things in this film that might be kind of risque, I guess. But really, the story is kind of the important part. Larry Cohen was one of the people that really thought that you could do a whole lot with just very little. Whereas today's movies, you're going to see movies where people are just throwing everything at the screen, everything in the kitchen sink, as they say. Larry Cohen really wanted the audience to be a participant in the watching of the movie. So they were not just watching all these wonderful, beautiful images. This is a good-looking movie, and it is well shot. And there are some really interesting, fun, visual things to see in it, don't get me wrong. What he wanted people to do is to get into the story and really feel like they're piecing together the mystery too. So you're going to be following this Peter Nichols cop, who was a detective, the whole story, and him sort of kind of figuring out what they all have in connection, why they're doing it, and the theological questions that we might have about God. Larry Cohen felt like the Bible was some of the scariest shit ever written. And he's not wrong. There is a lot of angry stuff from God in the Bible that exacts his revenge for mankind doing wrong. And so he decided to take this idea and then add some sci-fi elements to it into this like big old pile of a crazy Larry Cohen film. I personally think that, for a 70s film, which recently we just started digging into the 70s era a lot, with some of the movies on our podcast. We watched like the Bug movie, which is from 1975, and then we watched Squirm from 1976. And there's something about 70s movies that were very serious, but they took some risks back then. They were doing a lot of new things. It wasn't like the 80s. They did a lot of real serious stuff. And there is a lot of heavy dialogue in God Told Me To. But if you follow along, it is actually a really interesting story, and you find out some things that are pretty wild by the end of the movie. Richard Lynch's performance in this is pretty creepy and unsettling. Tony LoBianco does a really good job. Fun fact, Robert Forster almost played the role of the detective Peter Nichols, but apparently he didn't want to work with Larry Cohen because he was too demanding. But I'm a big fan of Robert Forster, so it's interesting to know that he might have actually played that role. And I could have seen him fit in it very well. But what Tony LoBianco does here, I think, is actually really good. Some really good performances and stuff that were kind of like, it made you feel on the edge of your seat. Because there's like people that are just completely content with how they kill people. And just getting in their mind with that is just so trippy. While this detective figures that out. And I guarantee you by the end of the movie, you're not going to be expecting what has happened and what is happening. It kind of makes it a little bit more sense as it goes along. And it doesn't take too long to kind of get there. I think you'll probably piece some of it together, at least by the beginning. But this movie it is all over the place. So expect pretty unexpected stuff. A lot of fans of this movie in particular, you're going to find really enjoy this film. Or they're, somewhere in the middle. But if you're a fan of this movie, this is the best way you could possibly watch it. It looks fantastic on here. But yeah, for me, as far as the story and sort of the elements that are involved here, I watched this late last night and I was in tune with the movie the whole way. It did get a little weird towards the end and what was going on and what this detective character is and why he is being kind of led astray in this situation by this other character, and the mystery sort of unfolds into some pretty wild stuff that is going to probably make you go, what? But yeah, Larry Cohen wrote it. I thought it was pretty decent. I'd say this is like a 6.5. It is one that I will definitely rewatch again, but it may not be for everyone considering it's from the 70s. But if you are a fan of the 70s and you have watched some pretty interesting stories, this is pretty crazy. A bunch of people going on murder sprees that have no guilt about killing people and then going, well, God told me to, is pretty unsettling. But what do you think? Have you seen this? Have you been a fan of the movie? This is my first time, so I really actually kind of enjoyed it, and I like this kind of storytelling. The Blue Underground release is going to be out on the 19th as a reminder of July here. So if you want to pick it up, like I said, I have an MVD Entertainment Group link for the MVD shop that you can actually order a copy from. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I'm starting to do a lot more different types of videos on here. I typically do a lot of reviews of new ones, unboxings, and movie hauls, so expect to see more than just reviews. We also do a podcast, which we do every Monday. There we do a lot of older films, but sometimes newer too, and those are typically deep dives. Plus we do interviews with a lot of directors and writers and stuff. So definitely tune in and check out our catalog if you haven't already. And thanks for coming by. And as always, long live the void.